The alien fleet moved silently across the edge of the solar system. Their ships were sleek and sharp, glowing with cold blue light. For centuries, their empire had conquered world after world, never facing true resistance. To them, humanity was only another primitive species, weak and unorganized. They had read old signals of human wars, small ships, fragile machines, nothing to fear. The alien commanders gathered in their flagship, staring at their control panels. "Send the scan," ordered the High Commander, his voice calm but filled with pride. A wave of energy spread from their flagship, moving fast toward Earth's defenses. The aliens leaned forward, ready to laugh at the weakness they expected to see. But what returned on their screens was not weakness, it was something else, something none of them could explain. At first, only a shadow appeared, massive and dark, hiding in orbit above Earth. Then the details became clear, a warship so large that their scanners struggled to capture its full size. Its surface was armored in layers of unknown metal, darker than space itself. Strange lines of red light pulsed across its body, like veins of fire running through stone. The alien council chamber grew quiet. No one spoke, no one laughed. The ship did not move, but its presence alone pressed down on them like a weight. One of the junior officers whispered, "This cannot be real." The High Commander narrowed his eyes. "Increase the scan, focus on its weapons." The data came back and their screens lit up with red warnings. The warship carried weapons no empire in the galaxy had ever seen. Cannons large enough to break moons, missiles that seemed to vanish into strange pockets of space, energy beams that twisted and folded reality itself. But the most terrifying detail was the silence. The warship's systems were active, alive, yet completely quiet. It was as if the ship itself was watching them, waiting for them to blink. Across the alien fleet, crews felt the same unease. They were trained to fear nothing, but now their hands shook as they read the data. The warship's energy signature was unstable, like it was holding back more power than it should. One officer muttered, "This thing was not built for defense, it was built for fear." In the alien flagship, the High Commander tried to hold his pride. "We are the masters of the stars. No human creation can threaten us," he declared. But even as he spoke, the warship shifted just slightly. Its lights flared brighter, and every alien ship in range felt their systems flicker. Engines stalled, lights dimmed, screens went black for a second. The entire fleet gasped in shock. When the power returned, the warship was still silent, unmoving. It had not fired a single weapon, but it had already shown its power. Panic began to spread. Messages flew across the alien fleet, captains demanding orders, crews whispering of retreat. Fear was not in their nature, yet now it spread like fire. The High Commander clenched his fists. "It is only technology. There must be a weakness." But deep inside, he knew there was none. One young officer whispered a forbidden thought. What if the humans are not weak? What if they were never weak at all? The words spread through the chamber, unspoken, but understood. This warship was not a weapon of conquest. It was a warning. It stood as proof that humanity had prepared, that humanity had waited, and now the galaxy would learn the price of underestimating Earth. The alien fleets did not move forward. They hovered in silence, watching the warship, waiting for it to act. But the warship did nothing. It simply hung in orbit like a shadow carved from fear itself. Its presence alone was enough to paralyze an empire, and for the first time in centuries, the alien co-conquerors realized a terrible truth. They were not the hunters anymore. They were the prey. The alien fleet remained frozen at the edge of Earth's orbit, their sleek ships glowing faintly against the dark void, but none of them dared to advance. Their scanners replayed the same terrifying image again and again, the human warship, massive, silent, watching. Whispers spread through the alien ranks, whispers that no commander could silence. Soldiers asked one another if they had ever seen such power before. Veterans admitted with pale faces that nothing in all their campaigns had ever felt like this. Fear was not supposed to exist in their empire, yet fear now spread like fire through dry grass. Inside the command chamber of the alien flagship, the High Commander clenched his jaw. He ordered the scans to be repeated, to search for weakness, to find a flaw in the human ship's design. But every line of data came back with the same result. Impossible armor, impossible weapons, impossible silence. The younger officers shifted nervously. One whispered, "Perhaps the humans want us to see this." Another muttered, Perhaps it is a trap. But the silence of the warship spoke louder than their voices. No threats, no signals, just quiet watching. One admiral slammed his fist on the table. "We are conquerors. We cannot fear shadows. It is only one ship." His voice was strong, but his hands trembled, for even he could not shake the image burned into his mind, the glowing red veins that pulsed across the warship's hull, the energy readings that bent their scanners, the single glance of something beyond their understanding. Far across the fleet, messages flew between captains. Some demanded immediate retreat, others urged a reckless strike before the humans revealed more. Arguments grew heated, and discipline began to falter. Fear was doing what no enemy had done for centuries, breaking their unity. Then, as if to remind them of their place, the warship moved, not an attack, not a weapon, only a slow rotation. But that single motion made every alien ship tense as though death itself had turned its head. Their screens flickered again, lights dimmed, engines wavered, and yet the warship did nothing more. "Why does it not fire?" one officer whispered. "Why does it wait?" No one had an answer. But in their silence, a realization began to form. The humans were not showing weakness, they were showing control. They had built something so terrifying that they did not even need to use it. The High Commander tried to speak with authority. "They are bluffing. One ship cannot end an empire." But the words fell flat. He saw the doubt in the eyes of his crew. He felt it in his own chest. Deep inside, he wondered, if this was what one human ship could do, then what was hidden beyond? What other secrets had humanity forged in the shadows of their world? Across the galaxy, alien leaders who received the scan data were shaken. Entire councils sat in silence as the image of the warship filled their screens. Ancient empires that had laughed at humanity now argued in secret. If they should retreat or prepare for war, traders whispered of a new legend, soldiers muttered of a curse, and even priests in far-off worlds began to call the warship an omen. Fear was spreading faster than light, faster than war, faster than reason, and aboard the silent human warship, hidden behind its black armor and red veins, the crew did not move, their faces calm, their eyes steady. They knew what they had built. They knew what message they were sending. They did not need to fire a single shot because fear itself had already become their greatest weapon. The aliens, who had once thought themselves masters of the stars, now stood paralyzed before a single human creation, and they began to understand the truth. They were not looking at just a warship. They were looking to the shadow of their own defeat. The alien fleet remained trapped in silence, their ships hung like insects caught in a web, every eye fixed on the human warship, the unknown shadow that had shaken their empire. Their pride told them to advance, but their fear kept them still. Finally, the High Commander demanded action. "Open a channel." His voice was firm, but the tremor in his tone betrayed him. They would not show weakness. They would try to speak with the humans. Perhaps they could force a mistake. Perhaps the humans would reveal fear of their own. The comms crackled, and the signal was sent. "Humans of Earth," the alien envoy spoke. "You are surrounded. Your defenses are hopeless. Submit and your people will live. Resist and you will be destroyed." The message echoed across the void, confident, practiced, the words of conquerors. But the reply was nothing like they expected. At first there was only silence, then a voice came, calm, slow, heavy, like thunder rolling over mountains. "Turn back or be erased." No shouting, no anger, just a simple warning. The alien chamber grew cold. Officers looked at one another. No one laughed, no one smirked. The voice was not filled with desperation, it was filled with certainty. The High Commander slammed his claws against the console. "They bluff. Humans do not have such power." But even as he spoke, fear gnawed at his heart. To prove his words, he ordered a squadron of smaller ships forward, swift hunters that had burned countless worlds. Their engines roared as they darted toward the warship, bright lights flashing, weapons charged. But before they could even reach firing distance, the ships vanished. No explosion, no light, no trace. One moment they existed, the next they were gone. The scanners screamed with errors. The crews shouted in panic, and still the warship did not move. Silence fell again, thicker, heavier. The High Commander stared at the empty space where his hunters had been, his mouth dry, his pride cracked. "What happened?" one officer whispered. "What weapon was that?" another stammered. "There was no fire, no energy beam, nothing." The warship's red veins glowed faintly, as if mocking them, as if breathing. The high commander shouted, "It is an illusion, it must be a trick." But his words rang hollow, for deep inside he knew what the others had begun to realize. The humans had weapons beyond sight, weapons that did not need fire or sound, weapons that erased enemies like shadows under the sun. Across the alien fleet, fear turned into chaos. Captains argued, soldiers begged their leaders not to send them forward. Some even cut their channels. Hiding in silence, discipline was breaking. Then the human voice came again, this time louder, deeper. "You were warned." Only 3 words, yet they crushed the hearts of an empire. The high commander tried to stand tall, but his body trembled. The galaxy had always bowed before them. But now they stood before something greater, something they could not understand. For the first time in their history, they felt powerless. And aboard the human warship, unseen hands moved calmly over controls. Human faces remained still, their eyes cold. They had expected this moment. They had waited for it, and now they were showing the galaxy what humanity had become. It was no longer a question of if the aliens feared them. It was now a question of how long that fear would last. While the alien fleet struggled to understand what they had seen, the human warship remained silent, drifting in orbit like a sleeping giant. The galaxy stared at it with fear, but none of them knew the truth of how it had been built. Years ago, when Earth was still broken by its own wars, when nations fought and borders bled, humanity had almost destroyed itself. Weapons of fire, hunger, and greed had pushed them close to extinction. But in that darkness, something began to change. People looked at the stars and realized that Earth would not be safe forever. The first whispers came from secret rooms, hidden under governments and alliances. Scientists, engineers, and old soldiers met in silence. They spoke of an enemy not yet seen, of dangers that would one day arrive from the stars. They called their project a shield, but deep inside they knew it was something else. Slowly, across decades, humanity gathered its brightest minds. Old rivals shared knowledge, enemies became partners, technologies from every corner of Earth were fused together, and in hidden stations orbiting far from curious eyes, a skeleton of steel began to grow. It was not built in pride, it was not built in conquest, it was built in memory. Humanity remembered the pain of its own wars, the blood spilled for power, the mistakes of the past. They swore never to repeat them, and so they built a weapon not just of metal, but of fear itself. They called it the Dreadnought of Silence, a name whispered only among those who worked in the shadows. Its hull was forged from metals drawn from asteroids, its core burned with energy that came from experiments forbidden by law. Its weapons were shaped from theories others said were impossible, yet humanity made them real. Every layer of its armor carried the memory of Earth's wars. Every system was designed not to strike first, but to strike last, to end any threat with certainty. As it grew, rumors spread. Some said it was cursed, others said it was alive. The workers who touched its surface swore they felt it breathing, but they kept building because they knew the galaxy would test them one day. When the ship was finally complete, it was hidden in orbit, its systems dark, its name never spoken aloud. Only a select few knew the truth, but those few carried the weight of all humanity. And when the aliens arrived, laughing at Earth, thinking of conquest, thinking of weakness, the time for silence ended. Back on the alien flagship, their council reviewed fragments of stolen intelligence. Their spies had once thought humans divided, weak, too busy fighting themselves to ever rise. Now those spies were silent, their reports shredded because everything they had believed was wrong. The aliens stared at the old images of human wars, the endless battles across continents, the fire and destruction, and they realized something terrifying. Humans had always been building toward this. Their history was not a weakness, it was training. Every war had taught them, every loss had forged them. The alien commanders sat in silence, the truth pressing down on them heavier than the warship itself. Humanity had not simply built a machine, they had built a symbol, a weapon that carried not only power but memory. And now that symbol hung above Earth, quiet, patient, unshaken. The galaxy finally understood. Humanity had never been sleeping. Humanity had been preparing. The alien council could no longer hide their unease. The warship hanging above Earth was not a shadow. It was a storm waiting to break. Their fleets had never known defeat, but now whispers of retreat poisoned their discipline. Commanders shouted to restore order, but fear had already entered their hearts. The High Commander rose from his chair, his voice sharp. "Enough," he roared. "We are the rulers of the stars. One human ship will not stop us. Prepare the attack." His words spread across the fleet, and reluctant crews obeyed. Thousands of ships shifted formation, engines flaring bright, weapons charging. Across the dark void, the human warship remained still. No shields rose, no weapons fired. Its red veins pulsed faintly like the slow beat of a heart. The first alien salvo began. Beams of energy. I screamed across space, missiles streaked like fire, explosions filled the darkness with false suns. The entire alien fleet unleashed its wrath upon the silent giant. But when the light faded, the warship was still there, untouched, unmoved. The alien officers stared in disbelief. Their sensors reported impact after impact, yet no damage could be found. It was as if their weapons had been swallowed by the void itself. The High Commander's voice cracked with rage. "Again, all ships, again!" A second wave of fire lit up the stars, but the result was the same. The warship simply stood against it, calm, silent, unbroken. Then, at last, it moved. Not fast, not violent, just a slow surge of energy. The red veins along its hull flared bright like rivers of molten fire. Scanners across the alien fleet screamed with warnings. Systems flickered, engines coughed, entire squadrons lost control. And then it came, a single pulse, no beam, no explosion, just a ripple in the void, invisible yet undeniable. Alien ships shuddered as their power died. Lights went dark, weapons fell silent. Hundreds of vessels drifted helplessly, some colliding, others spinning into the emptiness. The mighty fleet that had crushed worlds was now a graveyard of silent machines. Panic erupted. Voices screamed through comms. "We are blind. Engines offline, weapons unresponsive." Entire wings begged for orders, but no order could save them. The High Commander's claws dug into his throne. He stared at the devastation, powerless to deny it. One single human warship had disabled half his fleet without firing a shot, without showing its true strength. And as silence returned, the warship's voice echoed again, cold and unyielding. "You were warned." The words cut deeper than any blade. Fear turned into despair. The alien crews no longer saw the humans as weak creatures of a single world. They now saw them as masters of a power no empire could understand. Some captains shouted for retreat, others for surrender, but most simply sat in silence, too afraid to speak, too afraid to breathe. Inside the human warship, the crew remained calm, their faces lit by red glow. They had trained for this moment. They did not fire in anger. They did not laugh at the fear they caused. They simply watched, knowing the message was clear. This was not just power. This was control. The galaxy had finally witnessed the truth. Humanity was not a broken race climbing from its ashes. Humanity was the storm, the shadow, the terror in the void. And for the alien empire that had once believed it ruled the stars, this battle was not a fight. It was a lesson written in silence. The alien fleet floated in chaos. Hundreds of ships powerless, drifting like broken toys in the endless dark. Those that still had engines dared not move. Those that still had weapons dared not fire. The human warship stood silent, its veins glowing faintly like an eye half open. Inside the alien flagship, fear had turned into silence. The High Commander sat frozen on his throne, his pride crushed under the weight of what he had seen. His empire had never known defeat. Yet here, in a single encounter, he faced not just defeat, but humiliation. Around him, his council whispered in panic. "We must retreat," one said. "No, we must surrender before it strikes again," another muttered. "We cannot bow to them. We must destroy it, no matter the cost." The chamber filled with arguments, but all of them knew the truth. No matter how many ships they had, no matter how many weapons they fired, nothing had touched the human warship. Nothing had even scratched its black armor. One younger officer broke the silence with a trembling voice. "Perhaps this is mercy, Commander. Perhaps they could have destroyed us already. But they wait. They watch. They give us a choice." The words struck the council like a blade. For the first time in history, their empire was not the one offering myrrh. They were the ones being judged. The High Commander tried to rise, but his legs trembled. His claws shook as he gripped the edge of the table. He wanted to roar, to demand war. But even he could not ignore the cold truth. Humanity had power they could not measure. In the outer fleets, soldiers sent private messages to their families. Captains prayed silently to gods they had never believed in. Some even abandoned their posts, letting their ships drift into darkness. Fear had already done what weapons could not. Then the voice came again, deep, heavy, human. Leave or be erased. Only 5 words, but they echoed through every ship, every chamber, every heart. The High Commander clenched his teeth, sweat dripping from his brow. This was not a battle anymore. This was a decision. His pride told him to fight. His fear told him to kneel. But his mind told him something worse. The humans had not even shown their full power yet. What if this is only one, he whispered to himself, his eyes wide. What if they have more? The thought froze him. If one ship could silence their entire armada, what would happen if Earth had built 2 or 10 or a fleet? The council argued louder. Some demanded retreat to save what remained. Others shouted that surrender would doom their empire forever. One admiral cried out, "If we bow, we will never rise again, but if we fight, we will die." The choice was heavy, crushing, and for the first time the rulers of countless worlds understood what it meant to be powerless. Back on the human warship, the crew watched in silence, their faces calm, their hands steady. They knew the aliens would break. They knew fear was stronger than any cannon. This was the design, not to fight every battle, but to end wars before they began. The High Commander finally lowered his head, his voice no longer proud, no longer strong. Signal the fleets, prepare to retreat. His council stared in disbelief, but none dared to challenge him. They had seen what he had seen. They had felt the same terror. Orders spread. Alien ships turned. Slowly, engines weak, movements broken, like beaten animals crawling away. The warship did not move. It did not fire. It simply watched as its enemies fled into the darkness. The choice had been made, and for the first time, the Empire had chosen survival over pride. And across the galaxy, the message spread like wildfire. Humanity had risen. Humanity had built a weapon that turned conquerors into cowards. Humanity had forced an empire to retreat. The legend of the dreadnought of silence had begun. The alien fleet retreated slowly, their proud ships broken in spirit, their weapons silent, their engines burning weak light as they crawled into the distance. No victory songs, no cheers, only silence and shame. They had come to conquer, but instead they carried fear back with them. On the surface of Earth, people looked to the skies. They did not see the full truth of what had happened above, but they felt something shift. For the first time in generations, humanity no longer looked small beneath the stars. Aboard the human warship, the crew remained calm, their faces stern, their eyes steady. They had not celebrated, they had not smiled. They knew this was not the end, it was only the beginning. The galaxy now knew their secret, and the galaxy would never forget. The warship sent one final broadcast across every alien frequency. The voice of humanity carried weight like thunder. We do not seek war, but we do not forgive. The words spread faster than light, reaching worlds far beyond the battlefield. On alien colonies, workers stopped to listen. Soldiers dropped their weapons. Children trembled as their elders spoke of the humans, and the phrase repeated in whispers, "We do not forgive." It became more than a warning. It became a prophecy. In the alien High Council, arguments turned to panic. Some demanded they rebuild, others urged alliances with other empires. But none of them could erase the memory of the silent ship, the image of their fleets drifting helplessly, the sound of that voice. Fear turned into legend, and legend turned into truth. Even in systems that had never seen Earth, the name of humanity began to spread. Traders spoke of their warship in hushed tones. Smugglers drew its outline on tavern walls. Priests declared it a sign that gods favored humans, and warriors swore never to cross their path. The galaxy had once laughed at humanity. Now it trembled at their shadow. The human warship returned to silence, hidden in orbit, its lights dimmed, its weapons resting, but its very existence was enough. The humans did not need to fight every empire. They needed only one ship, one memory, one story. Generations would pass, but the tale would remain. Alien children would grow up hearing the warning. Never scan the humans, never wake their warship, never test their silence. It became a law spoken in fear, and for humanity it was a turning point. No longer the weak, no longer the prey. They had carved their place in the stars, not with endless battles, but with a single truth. When humans rose, fear followed. The dreadnought of silence drifted quietly above Earth, its vanes dim, its guns asleep. But every empire knew that behind that silence was power, behind that silence was memory, and behind that silence was the will of humanity. And in the endless dark of space where empires rise and fall like waves, one legend burned brighter than all others. Aliens had scanned humanity's warship, and all they had seen was fear.